Are you going through the editing process of your manuscript and starting to question whether or not you should keep going on forward as a writer? Well, that is completely normal because I just finished my content edits, and today we are going to go over a few things I learned during this process. Welcome to The Right Mama with Jennifer Aline, a creative space where we talk about the writing process, the publishing world, and motherhood chaos. If you can't already tell, I was hit with a cold again. My immune system is not great. My girls are getting over colds as well. So, of course, it didn't skip over me, and my voice is just starting to come back. So, bear with me. I finally finished my content edits. I'm so excited. It was a lot of work, and luckily, the last 5 days, my mom came to visit. She helped out with the girls. I escaped to a whole bunch of different coffee shops and got down to business. During the last 2-ish weeks, when I really attacked these content edits, I learned a ton when it comes to how I write, what I still need to know when it comes to my writing, and a lot of the details that come with just writing a story in general. I realized that I am still learning, I'm still growing as a writer, and there are some things that I messed up that will haunt me for the rest of my life. So let's get right to it. The first thing I learned when it came to these content edits was that dialogue tags are really not always needed. You don't always need to say, he said, she exclaimed, he roared, he said angrily, he asked, whatever. You don't always need those dialogue tags. And I always thought I was pretty good at not always incorporating them in a scene if the scene is flowing well with the dialogue and the different characters. However, as I went through my manuscript, I realized I have a lot of dialogue tags that need to be taken out. And I did that. You don't always need to add he said, she said. You really only need once in a while to kind of keep the reader on track of who is in the scene to put that name in there. And even though growing up, when you're in creative writing classes and English classes, your instructors want you to use exclaimed or he stated wisely, or, they really want flowery language. But when it comes to the industry now, you don't always need those things. Simpler is better, and I am learning that now, again, sort of. For example, instead of saying she said while she stood next to the bar, you can just say so and so stood next to the bar and reached for her glass, and then continue on with the dialogue. You don't have to say he said or she said as she stood next to the bar. You can just show what that character is doing while they're talking. And then the reader understands that they're the one saying it. That really is all that's needed. And that kind of brings me to the next, number 2, part of this discussion. And it's a huge one that a lot of people talk about, showing versus telling. And I always thought, again, that I was pretty darn good when it came to showing more of my scenes versus telling. And when I'm talking about showing versus telling, if you don't really know what I'm saying, I will link some really awesome other author tubers and authors who talk very well about showing versus telling. But quickly, showing is when you're reading a scene and if it's first person point of view, they are not saying, I walked to the store. That is telling. Instead of telling, you can show my feet hit the pavement and the wet snow engulfed my sneaker. I'm just making this up as I go. But that scene is showing you that the person is walking in snow. You don't have to say, so and so walked to the store in the snow. You can show it. It's better for the reader. It makes for a more enjoyable story. And showing versus telling goes back to the dialogue tags. You can show instead of use he said, she said. 3, when it comes to what I learned during these content edits, is get rid of blah, 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 comma, blah, 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 and just bring the beginning of that sentence, what was in front of that comma, and involve it in the further into the sentence. I'll give you an example. also goes along the lines of using words such as and however. The comma, as, and however, I kind of bunched that into this little tidbit of information. It's a little confusing to explain, but instead of saying, as he walked to the store, he looked into the window. Take away that comma and as, get rid of it, and say, he looked into the window as he walked to the store. You don't need to make it into two clunky chunks of a sentence. Make it into one free-flowing statement. Of course, these examples are literally coming out of the top of my brain, but that's kind of what I mean. You don't always have to say, however, he was feeling a little sick today. He was feeling a little sick today. You don't always need however. Think about that word too. So I kind of put this into this little number because there are certain things you can take out to make a sentence flow better. 4, when it comes to what I learned from these content edits, was when you are explaining the emotions of a character, don't always use I felt or he felt. Just state those emotions. You can say, and this is more showing versus telling. Again, this kind of goes back to showing versus telling. But when it comes to emotions in a really in-depth scene, you don't have to always put that character in the front. You can just move forward and use the emotions, use the scene to tell the story. A way to show emotions without attaching the name of that character every time is, instead of saying, I felt his cold fingers on my neck, you can just say, his cold fingers brushed my neck. I know that's a really creepy example, but it shows that you don't have to say, I felt. You can say, his cold fingers brushed my neck. Okay, she felt that. The reader already knows that. And I know some people say, act as if the reader doesn't know anything. Take a step back and realize the reader actually does know quite a bit. So give them the benefit of the doubt. 5 is kind of my own personal dumb thing that I know I do and say quite often. And this is the word slightly. This is me knowing I have this problem. For some reason, I like to include the word slightly all the time. She shifted against the bar slightly. She just shifted against the bar. We don't need to say slightly. Stopped running and bent over slightly. He bent over after he ran. I add slightly to everything. And going into the content edits, I knew I said this word a lot and I found it a lot. So that's just me. If you're somebody who knows there's a certain phrase that you use, remember that. Put a big sign. I should put it right up here saying slightly, because then I will find a different word to describe certain movements and emotions and not use slightly. 6 is something that I think we all learn in high school and middle school and English classes and college and everything. But for some reason, when you're writing, you just go, 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 and you don't always think about when to enter into a new paragraph after dialogue. This happened to me a lot when it came to my content edits, and I felt so dumb when I went through and had to enter new paragraphs a whole bunch of times after dialogue. And to clarify what I'm saying is, if dialogue happens with a certain character and then another character jumps in, you have to start a new paragraph. You cannot connect that dialogue with another character unless it's that character's feelings and emotions. You have to separate that when it comes to dialogue, when it comes to paragraphs. And I know growing up that paragraphs have to be separated in that kind of way. But for some reason, I read my manuscript during these edits and I was entering a lot. I was really angry at myself. Why couldn't I figure this out? Why didn't I do this? And it's just one of those little things that I think you move forward with and you forget as you just get excited and really get into the meat of the story. And that happened to me. I am guilty of that, but I know a lot of other people are guilty of it too, so it made me feel a lot better. 7 is when you have a scene break in a chapter, a lot of people, including myself, like to just enter, so there's a little space in between the the part of the chapter. So you know there's either a day or a week, or there's some kind of space going on between those points in the chapter. However, sometimes when you're sending your manuscript through Word or Google Doc or wherever you write your manuscript, the pages might get a little funky. So when you're reading the manuscript, that space might be at the top of a page or the bottom of a page. And it may just look like the continuation of the story. And your editor or whoever is reading may be like, wow, did time pass? Are they in a different scene? What happened? So even though I'm not a huge fan of adding the 3 asterisks on there, the 3 little stars to separate the 2 thoughts in a chapter, it is beneficial. It makes sense. It really is a good idea to either put those 3 asterisks, those 3 stars in there, or a little design or whatever you want for your story to show the separation. Leaving it as just a space can really mess with the editor's head, the reader's head if you don't catch it. So I suggest listening to your editor or listening to fellow writers and putting in a little marking to separate those thoughts. And the grand finale, number 8. This one is just as bad as Slightly, I think. This one was not specifically a content edit, and Slightly was one that I just got mad at myself for, but this one is more along the lines of line editing. But they found it because I don't think you can miss this one. I spelled a certain word wrong the entire time. The entire manuscript, this word was wrong. And my computer was yelling at me, telling me it was wrong, had it underlined in red, saying, hey, Jenny, this word is wrong. You should check it out. And I ignored it the entire time and still somehow got picked up by a publishing house. So it's possible, guys. And actually, my editor said that this little mistake has happened before and it's not as rare as I think it is. But here it is, guys. I spelled Subaru wrong. Spelled Subaru, the kind of car, wrong the entire time. And I question myself. I don't even know how to spell it. I think I spelled it in the book Suburu. And it's really Subaru. All my friends now said they're going to make shirts that say hashtag Subaru the incorrect way and wear it to my release party or just wear it once my book's out. So if you want to jump on that train, go for it. You can put Slightly on the back as well. How I missed it, but I did. So now I'm always going to question myself when it comes to spelling Subaru, and my friends are never going to make me forget this. There you have it. There were 8 little tidbits of information that I learned as I went through my content edits. And for some of those, including Slightly and Subaru, I feel really dumb when it comes to messing those little things up. However, a lot of those 8 things I mentioned, and there's more, but those were the main 8 that I mentioned, those are popular. These are things that a lot of writers will mess up or get confused with when it comes to writing their manuscript. If you're an editor, I'm sure that all of these are things that you see and that writers should not take them to heart. Maybe I'll take the Subaru one to heart. So much for listening. If this is the kind of content you like, subscribe below, ring the bell, and give it a thumbs up. If you want more videos like this, comment and let me know. I will do my best to do some more of me feeling silly and dumb so you don't feel silly and dumb videos. I think that you, folks, and drink that coffee